It's Toby from Heavyweight MMA here today to talk with Mr. Paul Hurricane Briggs. Very thankful, Mr. Briggs, that you're willing to give us some time to chat on the show. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
So, for those of you that don't know, Mr. Paul Briggs was a two-time World Muay Thai Champ back in his youth, in the early days, back in his late teens. Later had a hiatus and moved on to fight boxing, where he fought for several titles, achieved different titles, and also notably fought Tomasz Adamek twice in some amazing bouts. Just wanted to talk firstly about your origins of your Muay Thai career. Early days, you started back when people didn't fight Muay Thai. I remember I'm from New South Wales. In New South Wales, we had like nothing like that going on. So we'd watch you guys up on the Gold Coast, etc., fighting against best of the best Thais. And it was like a foreign thing to me and very, very intriguing to see people fighting full Thai rules against best in the world. How did you kick off with your Muay Thai career in the beginning?
I actually was present at the first ever Muay Thai fight in the country in Australia, and definitely the first Muay Thai fight on the east coast. So it's funny, like my introduction to Muay Thai. My mum and dad went to Thailand for a holiday. I think I was 11 or 12. The movie Kickboxer had not even come out yet. And so no one knew what Muay Thai was. And it sure as hell didn't exist in this country. And I always wanted to box. My father was an ex-boxer and my uncle was a good boxer. And my mother made my father promise her that if they ever had sons, they were never going to box. And of course, they had twins. So I was born with a sparring partner and my brother. And that's all we ever wanted to do, was because we were taught how to box at a very young age. So all we were doing with any of our spare time was in the backyard with a pair of gloves on. And I've got photos of my first pair of gloves, and I think I was 2 or 3. I was just able to stand in those sort of baby sort of, onesies or whatever. And a pair of boxing gloves. So we couldn't box. So the next best thing was mum and dad went to Thailand for a holiday, and when they come back, my dad just threw a VHS video. I walked in the door and just said, "Check this out," and threw us a video. And we put the video in and started playing it, and had this ear screeching music that just I was like, "What is this?" And as soon as I was watching it, I just saw the most brutal form of fighting that I'd ever witnessed. And ever since that day, I was like, wow, so I don't just get to punch people in the head. I can punch them in the head, knee them in the head, kick them in the head, all that kind of thing. So then it was just the next best thing. Like my first love was always been boxing. Hence the reason why I run a boxing gym now and I'm all about boxing. Yet Muay Thai for me was the next best thing. And did I fall in love with it? I came to love it. Do I love it like I love boxing? No, not at all. I have an affinity with boxing. But I definitely had a love affair with Muay Thai. Yeah, without a doubt.
It's very interesting because, like you said, back then it just wasn't common knowledge in Australia. The Muay Thai scene hadn't even developed at all. So early days, there was some videos of you and your brother doing demonstrations to kind of educate people as to what Muay Thai was. How was it in those early days? Like one of my videotapes I watched religiously, I watched it must be honestly 100 times, was the Thailand versus Australia show, one of the shows there where you were on the card with Nugget, Tony Hill, etc., fighting best of the best. You fought John Mott in this one. Watched it so many times. How was it back then to be fighting what you already would have understood, like the boogeyman of Thai boxing, the best of the best, the guys where it comes from? It's their home fighting sport, and you're there challenging them. How did that feel to face them psychologically?
I learned so much. Like it made me the coach that I am today. Fighting John Mott was such a profound experience because I lived in this fantasy land of how good I thought I was. And I think I don't even know how many knockouts I'd had consecutively that year, but I was beating everybody, knocking everybody out. And I was just like, yeah, I'm the man. And my father said, okay, we'll bring some ties over. And they put John Hood up, and I looked at some footage of him and I thought, this guy doesn't really have much power. No problem. I'll fight him. He went on to be undefeated for 20 years, which is unheard of for a Thai. 20 years he was undefeated. And he was only beaten, I think in the late years, like in terms of Muay Thai, he was like an old man, old man, shouldn't have even been in the ring. And he lost to Borkow. So that was his first loss in like 20 years or something. To my knowledge, I'm happy to be wrong. So when I fought this guy and stood him, just standing in front of a fighter like this was just crazy. Like I remember I hit him with a shin kick across the neck, and his eyes rolled back and just went bang and clicked back on. And he was just looking at me, and I just thought, this guy is the Terminator. And I was hitting him with punches that usually would drop guys, and he would just bang his hands together and keep walking forward and just chop my legs. And he just destroyed me. He absolutely broke my soul. And I remember I was at Festival Hall. I was out the back in the dressing rooms and showering up, and my legs just had the most incredible welts up them, and I couldn't stand up properly. And that's right, I was sitting in the shower. I wasn't even standing in it. And the water was pouring on me, and I was devastated. I was a broken young man, very young man. I think I was only 17. And the owner of the camp, who bless his soul, was passed a little while ago, but I really loved this man. He taught me a lot. And he came out the back, and he was, I was dried off and I was getting dressed, and, he was kissing my face and he was crying. I couldn't believe it. I'd never experienced anything like it. He was the manager, John Ward's manager. He was the owner of the camp, and he was crying, just saying, you're too young to be fighting a warrior like this, but you need to come back to Thailand. I'm going to take you back to Thailand. I'll speak to your father, and you're going to live and train with John Ward. And I'm thinking, excuse my language, but fuck that, and I'm thinking, this old man saying, you'll come and you'll live with me. I'm thinking, for starters, I'm shattered. So I'm trying to just psychologically balance myself as a young man. I did not have anywhere near the tools that I have now. I had no tools whatsoever to be able to, one, understand what had just happened to me, two, be able to process it, three, deal with my own ego, which is a whole nother story. And then four, be able to actually handle the damage that was to my legs. And then these guys are talking about me going and spending time with them. It was like, you guys are off your head. And then I turn around and look at my dad for solace and comfort. And he's like, yep, no problem. We'll book the ticket next week. And I'm like, I'm not even going to mention the names I was calling him in my mind, but yeah, it was crazy. And I'll never forget it. He walked in, I think about a week or two later, I thought nothing more was said about it. The Thais had left, they'd gone back to Thailand. And I was like, I was laying on my bed with my girlfriend at the time. And, when you're 17, you're like, everything was amazing. I was making good money fighting at that age. And I had everything that I thought I wanted. I had the girl of my dreams, blah, 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 all of that. My dad's walked in my room and he said, threw this plane ticket on the bed, and he said, it's all booked. You're going to leave in 2 days. And I was like, what? And he said, you're going to Thailand. You're going to be living with John Horton, training at Sorchet Lada. And I was just like, I'm thinking in my mind, hang on, where am I in this? Is there a discussion that's going to happen around this or what? And he said, so get your head around it, and turn around and walked out. And my girl at the time just burst into tears. She was like, what? When did all this happen? And I was like, I know as much as you do. And she was just like, I don't understand you guys, you know. She come to understand. But yeah, within 2 days, I'm on a plane, and the rest is history, I suppose.
Yeah, and you and being such a young guy going to a foreign land like that and living for a while and training, how was that? It must have been a pretty eye-opening experience, you know, coming from small town Australia to a different country, completely different culture and customs, right?
It was crazy. Like, life is so cheap over there. I witnessed a murder while I was over there, and psychologically that really affected me. And I witnessed a man get shot over a pack of cigarettes or something, and which was kind of rare. But at the same time, they kept just giving me these magazines that you can buy in Thailand, and it's got all the latest homicides in the magazine, right?
Wow.
And there's like no censorship whatsoever. So I've just witnessed this thing. I've come back to the camp. I'm kind of a bit psychologically scarred, and I said to the owner of the camp, the manager of the camp, beautiful old man, and I said to him, look, I need to use the phone. I need to call my family. No problem at all. I called my twin, my brother, and of course he didn't answer. So I called my mum. Her phone rang off. I called my dad. And this is, mobiles had only just come in at this point. And so and when I say I rang my dad at the gym. You know, I rang my mum at home. I rang my brother. I think he had a mobile at that point. And anyway, couldn't get through to anyone. So I'm trying to talk to someone to get a grip on reality and on my sanity. And yeah, couldn't talk to anybody, couldn't get hold of anybody. So I just had to process all of that over the next sort of 24 hours. It really made me, you know, like, this experience of being over there and training. I put the fights that I had with Tomasz Adamek and my ability to be so mentally strong, and my ability to be able to train the way that I trained through my boxing career. I put all of that down to the fight with John Hod, and then going to Thailand and training with him.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, on that, I just wanted to talk quickly on John Hod. You've mentioned recently in an interview about stance, how it's important, how there are some parallels in life, etc. But I'm looking at John Hod, the way he stands, and the way I've noticed some of the other people. Sayak Noi fought a guy, Ben Pixie Burton, in Hong Kong over this way, and the way their base and their stance is so strong. Just wonder if you could talk on that a bit, because there's something different about them. Like you said, they're a different human almost, the way they're so strong and based in the way they move.
They're so connected. And this is so much of what I teach with my fighters in my gym. There's so much more going on within everything, within reality, you know, to what a lot of people think. But coming back to stance, what I learned with John Hod was John Hod is a really spiritual dude, and he's really connected to his beliefs and all the rest of it. And so I was up there training with him when he was getting ready to fight Raymond Deckers, and at the King's birthday, and there's like 100,000 people turn up to sing. It's crazy. And so all these Dutchies are there, and all these Falang, and I'm there with the Thais, on the Thai side, you know, and all the Dutchies are looking at me. I'm at the press conference and that with them, and they're all looking at me like, who are you? Like, you're on the wrong side, mate. But I watched John Hod train for that fight with Raymond, and they learn at such a young age, you know, like they're dropped off at you know, there were kids, we get up to go running in the morning, and we go to put our shoes on, and there'd be a young kid sitting there sort of wiping tears away from his eyes. And there's this incredible story that I spoke about at one time at a speaking gig about this particular young kid, Pet. And I, you know, I sat down beside him. I said, "What's wrong?" And he looked at me and wiped his eyes away and said, in Thai, he's going, nothing. I'm fine. Nothing's wrong. And I said, "Mate, it's all right to miss your parents." And he broke down, started crying. And that was it. Like he missed his family. But they're dropped at a camp at such a young age, and everybody just takes them in. Everyone within the camp is part of that family, and it becomes what they are. It's not what they do. It becomes what they are. So their stance is a reflection of every single experience that they have from such a young boy being dropped off. You take a young kid in Western society these days and I speak about this all the time, at say age 15, let's say 15, right? You go and drop them in the wilderness and say, we'll see you 100 kilometers away. That's where the camp is. We'll see you there whenever you get there. All you got is yourself. They're going to be looking for their mobile phone. And if they find a mobile phone, they're going to be holding up looking for bars, seeing if they got reception, you know? Like, these kids just know how to survive. And there's something really intrinsically powerful and around warriorship to be learned around the young Spartans. You know, like at age 5, a Spartan boy was a survivalist specialist, could be dropped 100 kilometers away from camp and make his way probably over a couple of days, would be able to cross that terrain, just find the camp, because he'd know how to navigate. He'd know how to use the sun and the elements to be able to navigate where the camp would be able to find his way back there and be able to survive. He'd know what food to eat, what food not to eat. He'd know how to catch game, all that kind of thing. So I just think humanity's shifted and changed so much that kids these days, one, have got no idea. And you know, they are just in this world that has absolutely nothing to do with reality, you know. So my greatest experiences over there, even running in the morning and learning exactly that, how to stand, was all based in I think, not just what you're taught with regards to from a technical perspective, because this is what you're talking about. Yeah, many people around the world are taught the same kind of thing, but why are the Thais different? Why is their stance different? And I'm telling you, it is a psychological understanding of how they live their life.
It does make sense, because it's a very, very, very different thing when you look at you facing Jomod that day. You can see he's really like something special, right? He's really grounded somehow, really like a piece of steel.
What Thais do you know? Sorry to cut you off, but what Thais do you know go 20 years undefeated, 20 years without losing a fight? And don't worry, Jomod did lose fights, but I'm saying he had a run there of nearly 20 years where he was undefeated. That's crazy.
Absolutely amazing. Now, jumping off subject a little bit, talk into a few of the greats of combat sport from Australia, such as yourself. And one of the common sort of threads that pops up is obsessive sort of behaviors, OCD's been mentioned, compulsive personalities. Is that something that you feel has something that's in you as well, that's helped drive you to train and achieve things, that you can really focus on things and drive towards goals, etc.?
I think I'm just driven. The whole idea of, look, the world has more labels today than we've ever had. You know, 30 years ago, ADHD never even existed. You know, kids were very energetic, you know. But these days, because of the foods that we consume and the excuses that we make, and I'm not going to get into the medical side of it. I'm not interested in anyone else's opinion around it. But from a psychological perspective, the food that you eat affects the way that you think. Simple as that. So, yeah, I just think that I think there's a lot to be learned about going back to old ways, you know, because there's many things that don't need to be tried to be reinvented, you know, like we've been around for a long time, you know, human beings. So, and I think that we've sort of half got it right many, many times, you know, throughout the history of humanity. And I just think there's a lot to be learned from, you know, the way that we used to do things.
Yeah, just on that, if you jump onto that diet, I heard you talking on diet before. What are your feelings on that? Are you implying about like a Spartan type of diet, or a raw diet is better than processed, sugary, etc.? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
100%. I eat no sugar, I eat no gluten, no wheat, no dairy, minimal fruit. It has to be seasonal, and I basically drink sencha tea is my my staple. So, and water. That's it. That's all that I drink. And ask anyone who's close to me, they'll tell you I've got tea canisters like that I carry around with me all the time. So, food's everything. I got sick a few years ago. A lot of people don't know this, and I just basically had to change everything. Otherwise, I wasn't going to be here anymore. So, you know, you couldn't live the life that I had lived in the past, I suppose, being so angry and using illicit substances and that sort of thing, and not have it affect you. You know, there's many men that I knew back in the day who aren't here anymore. So I am, and that's great. And so for me to be here and continue on, there's many things that had to change. Not just the way that I thought about things, but also the way that I ate, the way that I conducted myself, everything. So diet's massive. You know, there's a thing called the vagus nerve, which connects the mind to the stomach. And what we put in the stomach directly affects, you know, the thoughts that we think. So sugary things are highly acidic, you know, which make you really agitated. Coffee has an adrenal effect on you. You know, being too full, eating too much even is not healthy. If you think about how we used to live back in the day, you know, we would hunt, we would catch game, we would eat our fill. And then when would you catch something next? You know, this whole idea of people, even with intermittent fasting and that sort of thing, great. You know what? We've done it forever. Because back in the day, we couldn't go down the 7-Eleven or the food store and buy groceries, you know, of anything that was in a packet. So, you know, for me, I do not eat anything that's in a packet.
And eating clean, what are the benefits as far as your thinking and mind go with that? What are your feelings on that?
It's everything. Like I expressed before, the true mind exists within your stomach, you know, and the mind is throughout the whole body, obviously, but it's not just here. This is the brain, the receiver and perceiver of information, the conceiver of information, of experience and everything. It really is held in the gut, which is what we call the second mind, which is really, you know, based in the stomach. So yeah, it's I've come to learn and understand, you know, through my younger ignorance of what would destroy me, you know, and I abstain, and I'm incredibly disciplined. If I was as disciplined when I was fighting as I am now, who knows how far I could have gone.
Awesome. I had another question, Paul. Just wanted to know your overall feeling of your experience as being a professional fighter for Muay Thai and also for boxing. What were the overall positives and negatives of being a professional fighter?
The positives are obviously everything that can come from it. The positives are the patterns and conditioning within your mind that you create throughout your experience that then can serve you later in life, as it does with myself. I'm incredibly disciplined now. What are the pitfalls? I think that with any professional athlete, there's so many professional athletes out there who are making good money, and yet they have not learned about money. There are so many professional athletes out there who have not developed their emotional intelligence as much as they are developing their bodies, or they're developing their even their minds. I think when you come to understand how life really works, You can step into being more of a role model through simply by being yourself, through your actions. I'm not talking about, being a super inspiration to anyone or anything like that, but just understanding that, some of the greatest warriors throughout the history of humankind have been kings, so to elicit that kind of energy, that king energy is really, really powerful. What does the whole planet do when there is a massive fight? I mean, a massive fight on. The whole planet stops. Everybody watches it. Every single sportsman from many, many different codes will stop and watch that one thing. But does that mean that a boxer goes and watches golf? Not necessarily. Does that mean that a boxer will go and watch tennis? Not necessarily. But I can guarantee you there's many, many other sports out there that will stop whenever there's a big fight on. And hence the reason why the biggest money earners on this planet are fighters, whether they be boxers or whatever, they're fighters.
That's true. You mentioned before about having some nervous system problems. Was that, do you think, related to the contact of fighting, or is it related to other things?
It was definitely, it's definitely from fighting. I've had brain hemorrhages before. And like I said before, the mind exists within the whole body. So when we talk about brain damage, what people say is brain damage. Yes, you can damage the brain when you get hit. But when we talk about damaging the nervous system, you get hit any part of your body, you're damaging your nervous system. Your nervous system exists throughout your whole body. So the issues that I had with my nervous system were a combination of a couple of things. Fighting, some of the life experiences that I had that were a little bit traumatic, you could probably say. And on top of that, the cocaine abuse. I was a cocaine addict for 20 years, and I've been 100% clean for 10 now. So it was the damage I had with my nervous system was a combination of that. I've had a lot of fights. I've done a hell of a lot of sparring, and most fighters get damaged in the gym. They don't get damaged in the ring. They get damaged in their sparring, and Muay Thai fighters don't consider the damage that they sustain and they don't maybe think about it because there's not a sustained damage to the head like with boxing. But I'm telling you now, Muay Thai has been alive and kicking in this country for long enough now that we've had some very proficient and very successful fighters that are now retired. And I know all these guys, and there's hip replacement after hip replacement going on, and the greatest thing that I can probably be proud of at this point of my life is that, one, I have my faculties together. Two, my body is in great shape, and it hasn't always been that way. Like, I was a mess when I retired as well, but it's taken me a decade. It's taken me the last decade to really become as healthy as I am now. And I credit the majority of that to the amount of stretching that I do, which is like hours and hours a day.
Interesting. Just on the subject of brain trauma, etc., how would you say is a way that like up and coming guys, whether it's MMA, Muay Thai, boxing, how they can somehow limit a little bit of damage as far as in the training room, etc.?
Consider the training that you're doing. Consider how often you're sparring. Consider how dehydrated you are. Consider how much hydration you have. This is massive. A good 85%, not to 90% of the world's ailments are caused by dehydration. And so many people don't understand this. They don't even know this. Most of the planet is dehydrated. If you think about a human being is a massive battery. Yeah. if there's no liquid in a battery, if a battery runs dry, it will just fuse out. It will just burn out, and it won't carry a charge. What carries a charge within a human being? The human being being adequately hydrated. So when you understand, there's more and more knowledge coming out now around energetics and that kind of thing, and that's the way the world is going now, which is phenomenal. When you understand the energetic world and you come to learn more about that, you'll understand just how important hydration is for a human being, and just how important it is, especially for brain damage as well with fighters. So many fighters, look, don't get me wrong, when you throw an inanimate object at a human being's brain, yes, you're going to damage yourself, 100%. Does that mean that all fighting should be banned and people should not do that? No. What, are we just going to lay down and die tomorrow now and just stop experiencing? I mean, that's really what life is about. Life is about experience. Can we do it better? 100% we can. By looking after ourselves, by considering how much sparring we do, considering how much rehab we do, and how much we look after our bodies, and how much we look after our minds, considering the amount of training that we do. Like I said, all of the training that I do in my gym now is balanced 50-50 with stretching protocols, with rolling protocols, and with rest days. You know, there's many times where guys come in here, if my fighters come in, and I just look at them when they walk from the front door to the ring, and I say to them, "How are you feeling?" And they go, my guys know now not to say good, and they don't. They give me a synopsis of how they're feeling, how their sleep was, how much food they've had, how hydrated they reckon they are. Then we make the assessment around what kind of training that they're going to be doing, and the idea of being a competent, successful fighter is being able to get as much from the training you're doing by doing as little training as possible.
It's great, and it's great that these up and coming guys get to learn and progress, living through your lessons. You know, it's a great thing. Paul, I just wanted you to quickly just talk on your gym and what you're doing at the moment before we finish up.
So I run Sanctum Boxing, and I'm actually sitting looking. I'll just turn the camera around if you like.
Yep.
So this is the gym, sitting in front of the ring at the moment. My beautiful partner just sitting on the lounge with me. And so I run Sanctum Forge Boxing Gym. We train professionals and amateur fighters. We have a general population membership base of people who want to learn authentic boxing. And a lot of the training that we do is I feel is cutting edge. You know, I was, before obviously the pandemic, I was in the United States each year in training camps over there with elite coaches from many different sports, learning how we can just train better, you know, how we can get more longevity from the sports that we exist within. And that's really what I'm all about now. You know, I just love boxing. You know, I've loved boxing since I was, I got my first pair of gloves, I think at 2 or 3, like I said. So I love being in gyms. I've met a beautiful woman who loves being in gyms as well, which is amazing. So we run this place, and it is our life, and we're extremely happy with the life that we live.
Awesome. So just so you know, I'm actually 4 years older than you, Paul. So 4 days older than you, I mean. So respect your elders, Mr. Briggs.
4 days.
4 days. But what I wanted to say is, although I'm 4 days older, I grew up really looking up to you, you know, being into combat sports myself, and seeing your uprise and your fights from Muay Thai through to boxing. Really respect you, and thank you so much for giving me a bit of your time. I appreciate it. I appreciate the messages that you gave us, and thank you again.
Thanks a lot for having me on. I really appreciate your time as well. And, you know, best of luck with the podcast. I'm sure it'll go well because you're doing a great job.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Briggs. Thank you, and have a good day. Take it easy.
Cheers.